Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So as you're coming in, feel free to go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat. We are going to get started in just a moment. Thank you for joining us today. I definitely see some familiar names and faces, so thank you all for joining us today. So I think we only have an hour, so I think we will go ahead and get started. Welcome, thank you for joining us today for the third in our webinar series so far. This webinar is titled Funding Your Academic Career and Boosting Your CV, Applying for Fellowships. So before we get started, just a little bit about the EARN conference. So the Emerging Researchers National Conference in STEM, or the EARN conference, which is sponsoring and hosting this webinar today. We are funded by the National Science Foundation HBCU UP program since 2011. 2020 marked the 10th celebration of the EARN conference, and the overall goals and objectives are to prepare a diverse cadre of students for global careers in STEM, as well as to help students hone their scientific communication skills. Some of the conference activities include about 600 to 800 undergraduate and graduate student STEM research presentations, as well as professional development workshops, education and career fair, and some really exciting plenaries with some amazing STEM luminaries. So I forgot to introduce myself, but I am Iris Wagstaff. I'm a STEM program director at AAAS. I'm also the PI on the NSF grant that funds the EARN conference. And I'm also the project lead for the EARN conference. We are actually looking for a site and location for next year. We've had to cancel the conference for the last 2 years, but look out, more information to come. Next slide, please. So I just want to acknowledge our project team. In addition to myself, we have Neela White, who's a project director, Allison Gonzalez, who is our senior program associate, and Gabby Haynes serves as our external evaluator. Thanks. So now I am, thrilled and excited to have Dr. Marianne Leung again with us today. She's been supporting the EARN conference for many, many years. She serves as the professional development trainer and presenter for help our students prepare to give their oral and poster presentations at the conference, as well as the abstract. So I'm thrilled that she's with us again today, so I will hand it over to her.
Great, thank you so much, Iris, and welcome everyone to this webinar. I'm super delighted to be here. As Iris said, I feel very lucky to have been involved in the EARN conference actually from the very beginning, and I went to I think every single one. So it's a thrill, and it's a wonderful conference, and it's a wonderful community. So I'm just happy to be a part of anything to help you all make wonderful careers in STEM. So before we get started, I'll just go over a couple little details. So this webinar is designed to be an hour, and that includes time for Q&A. And I'm more than happy to take questions throughout the webinar, so you do not have to wait to the end. A lot of times it's just easier if something's on the slide and you have a question, just ask. So feel free to raise your hand or just unmute yourself and ask the question. You can also put something in the chat as well, and people will let me know when there's something in the chat. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm kind of presenting on this particular topic. I was lucky when I was in grad school to have received a fellowship that was offered through the Department of Energy. It's called the Computational Science Graduate Fellowship Program. So I was a fellow in that program. And then later on, as an alum, I was asked to come back and run the program and try to take a great program and make it even better. I did the best I could. What I'm trying to communicate here is that I have experience on both ends of the fellowship side. So I've applied, and then I've also kind of run programs. So I can give you some insights from both sides. I also do a lot of work I've been very involved in the fellowship roundtable organization that is put together by the National Academies, and that's where people from fellowships from all over the place come together, and they just share best practices and talk about issues and whatnot. So I've learned a lot of insights from that I'm happy to share with you as well. Other things that I do, I'm at a small nonprofit called Sustainable Horizons Institute, and we do workforce development and diversity inclusion. So we're all about helping to develop the workforce and in a very and supporting diversity and inclusion. And we also do work. Was on a study committee for a congressionally mandated National Academy study of the NASA University Leadership Institute. So with that, we can start moving towards talking about you guys and where you are and where you're headed. So that's what this webinar is really all about, is thinking about you, where you're trying to go, and what is your path going to look like, and how can you make that the best path possible. So for some people, the path kind of might seem like a little bit of a maze, like, oh my gosh, how do I navigate my way through here, depending on your background and how many mentors you have, and whether you have people in front of you that have gone before or not. But certainly it can be a little bit confusing. For other people, sometimes it's like, I have no idea where this is going. There's this path, but I can't quite see where it's going. Am I going off a cliff or what? And for other people, it might seem like maybe a little bit of a dangerous challenge, testing waters that you haven't been through, but certainly a challenge. And of course, I really hope that your path never ends up looking like this, which is a collapsed freeway. But hopefully some of the things that we'll talk about today will help you so that you bolster your, your toolkit with ways to help ensure that you have a really wonderful and successful path. So the way this webinar is going to be organized is I'm going to start out with just a few questions to kind of get to know who's out there, and you can kind of get to know each other as well. And then we'll talk about why you should even consider applying for a fellowship, what would be involved in that if you decide you do. I'm going to go over just a few possibilities of fellowships and talk a little bit about like how to find a fellowship and which one is right for you. And then I'll share some tips for applying. So I am next going to go to I use this tool called Poll EV, and I will drop this link in the chat for you so that you all can go there. And I'm going to open up the poll. Here it is. So if you go to the link that I just shared, you should be able to sign in and access this poll, and then you can answer this first question, which is, what is your current academic status? You can also text, as you see, if you text Marianne Leung 407 to 22333, you can answer by text as well. So just trying to figure out who's out there and what academic level you're at. So I'll give you a minute to answer. I can't tell if, let me do this. I just, yeah. Okay, so as everyone's a doctoral student as far as I can tell so far. And yeah. Okay, so I can't tell if, I can't tell if everyone has has responded. I'll give you another second just in case, because I would be surprised if everyone was doctoral students, but it might be the case. All right. Okay, so oops, let me go back. So this is a little bigger. All right. So maybe that's the case. Everyone is doctoral students, so we should focus on postdoc fellowships is what I'm hearing from the audience. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next question. How are you feeling today? Pretty general question, so you can type in an answer and it'll show up on the screen as you type in your answers. I don't know if anyone's having trouble accessing the poll. There we go. Well, I like that. I'm glad to hear that. Oh, that's a really nice little face there. Good. Stressed. Sorry to hear that. It's not, of course, unfortunately uncommon these days because of the many challenges of the pandemic, but I hope you find a way to de-stress a little bit. So pretty good and well, and stressed is not too horrible. So okay, good. So notice this is a word cloud, so it does get words get bigger when they're used multiple times. So we have pretty well and pretty good or pretty stressed. I don't know. Pretty is something that seems to be common. So I appreciate you guys going in here. Hopefully you're not having any trouble getting access to this. Good. All right. So it seems like, yeah, we're getting more answers. All right. Okay, well, thank you for answering that. I have a few more questions. Oh, okay, tired. Yeah. You know, to be honest, I'm kind of tired too, but it's Thursday. We got one more day to go, and hopefully you'll be able to relax a little bit over the weekend. So, okay, let's go on to the next question. How about this one? What kind of Zoomer are you? We seem to live in Zoom or Zoom analogs like GoToMeeting, web, what is the Microsoft tool is Teams is pretty popular now too. So what kind of Zoomer are you? Do you like to sit attentively throughout the session? Do you walk around the house while you're online, or you're just trying to get your day going? Are you one who does a lot of talking, or are you a multitasker? What kind of Zoomer are you? All right, good. So we do have a lot of multitaskers. Okay, good. We're getting more answers. Thank you so much for participating. We've got some attentive people and some people that are roaming around, as well as multitaskers, which is not uncommon at all. All right, great. Seems like we've stabilized on our answers. Okay, thank you for participating in that. Here's another question. Have you ever applied for a fellowship? So that's, of course, the topic of this is fellowships. So I'm just kind of curious if any of you have already applied. Okay, I've got a yes there. Good. It's no right or wrong answer here. Just trying to get a sense of who's out there and what kind of experience you've had. Okay, so now we're getting more people that have not, but we still have some people who have. So that's good to know. I'm hoping that, I really do believe that this webinar should have good information for you whether or not you've already applied for a fellowship. All right, okay. So good, okay, so then next question. What have you learned since the pandemic? We've been in this for, believe it or not, over 2 years. It's hard to imagine. Hopefully you've learned something in that amount of time. And this is pretty open, so it could be anything about how to deal with the pandemic or some new technical topics or anything anyone has learned through the pandemic. There we go, self-care. That's really nice. I like to hear that. Patience. classes. Always, I wish I could tell that. You can't always tell which one, how they go together. Oh, so thank you for putting self-care together, because that's how the words stick together when you put a hyphen in them. Academia. Patience is a good one. Caution is another great one. Thank you so much for sharing what you've been learning. I know it's a challenge, but it really is an opportunity to learn things. Focus, that's a great one. Patience, I think that's the thing that I think I've learned the most is patience, because I like to get things done right away, but in a pandemic, it seems to take a lot longer. So good. All right. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing what you've learned in the pandemic. One last question here, and that is, what are your career plans? So what are you planning on doing? So it's, I think from the original poll, which, maybe people were still trying to log in. I'm not sure if that really represented everyone that's in the webinar, but seems that you're still in school. So what are you thinking you're going to do next? Get a postdoc. It is a great thing to do if you're a doc student and you're thinking of something else. Okay, something other than what's here, which is great. There's lots of different opportunities. Could be taking time off, or going into some other kind of avenue. All right, getting some answers here. Okay, good. Thank you so much for answering. We've got quite a few people looking to get a postdoc or do something else. If anyone who's in the other category wants to verbalize what you're doing, feel free to unmute yourself and let us know. Just kind of curious. Okay, and we've got people going into industry and academic research.
Hello, my name is Tara McKee. I selected other because I'm really thinking about the standard academic track with tenure or either entrepreneurship, because I love informal science education. I'd love to do both, so that's why I selected other. It's like a combination right now.
Okay, great.
Undecided.
Undecided, yeah, I probably should have that as one in there. But those are two great avenues for you to pursue. Thank you so much, Tara, for sharing that. And I think it's possible to do both. It might not be like right out the gate, because if you go into a tenure academic track, you're going to have to really focus on that. But eventually, I know lots of people do blend in their interest in outreach as well. So. Good luck to you on that. So thanks again for sharing that. Okay, so that's all the poll questions I have. So I'm going to go back to my slides here. And like I say, please feel free to interject throughout. Believe it or not, I'm not, there we go. Most academics, I don't have to hear myself. I'm happy to have this be a very, very interactive session so that you all get the most out of it. So with that, I will go ahead and walk through the agenda. And so the first thing I want to talk about is why you should even apply for a fellowship, or which kind of ends up being your own funding. And certainly, there's security in that. So if you are going to pursue like a postdoc, which I know many of you out there are, or if there's people who are looking into graduate fellowships, the thing about a fellowship, which is really nice, is its security. Like, you have this, it's more security than otherwise. They tend to always be, dependent on availability of funding, but they tend to be more secure. So you've got this funding, you're not dependent on your advisor getting a grant or whatnot. And because of that, you also end up getting more independence. So you often have more independence in terms of what you want to do with during your time as a postdoc or grad student. And then most certainly, fellowships are quite prestigious. So it's a little, gold star on your CV, and it will make you stand out in the future when you're going on for other opportunities. And one thing that a lot of people don't think about is the programmatic benefits. There are really huge programmatic benefits in many of the fellowships that, in my opinion, are kind of surpass some of the other benefits. And we'll talk more about that in this seminar. So to go through more about the benefits, so financial, of course, fellowships tend to pay more than you would get otherwise. So if you go into a postdoc position, without a fellowship, the likelihood is that your fellowship is going to pay you even more. So that's always nice. Sometimes they come with benefits like money for travel or money for research, for supplies. And then also another benefit that I think people don't really think about is that just going through the process of applying for a fellowship is a hugely tremendous learning opportunity. And, it's practical training for yourself. You're going to have to write a research proposal. You're going to have to research opportunities, and also believe it or not, you think of like getting your reference letters is like, that's just something you have to check off your list, but actually it's quite an art, and it's something that will help you with your career and staying in touch with people who are important to you. So I'm going to talk briefly about the fellowship that I had, just as an example, to illustrate some of the benefits of applying for fellowships. So the one that I had was the Department of Energy Computational Science Graduate Fellowship. And so, of course, I got a yearly stipend, which was, higher than what other grad students, were getting paid. It paid for all my tuition and fees. Mine was renewable for 4 years, which was lovely. So I kind of knew I was secure for 4 years worth of funding. I had an academic allowance, which was basically $1,000 a year, which I could use to buy books or supplies or equipment or go to conferences or whatever. It was just a little money that I could use. And then there was a conference every year where all the fellows came together, and that was really a wonderful experience. There was great content that happened in the fellows at the conference, but in addition to that, there was a wonderful networking opportunity, and I met people who, decades later, I'm still, close to and are part of my network. And then the other thing was that it had a practicum at a Department of Energy National Lab, which was really of interest to me because I was interested in working in the DOE labs. And so what that means is I just spent a summer there at the lab doing research on something else outside of my, my thesis work. Some other things about this fellowship, in my case, was important is that it was there was interdisciplinary training. So I, as a computational scientist, there's not a lot of computational science programs in academic institutions. And so this program specifically set out to kind of create a new kind of scientist, and that would be a computational scientist. So part of my fellowship requirements was that I took a year of courses in my own discipline, which was chemistry. And then I also took a year's worth of graduate level courses in applied mathematics and in computer science. So that's how I got a well-rounded training to be a computational scientist. And through the fellowship program, I got the opportunity to attend something called the ACTS workshop. And that is was a really great workshop that I learned about a lot of tools, and have led me to make connections to people at a national lab where I eventually did do my dissertation work. So as I mentioned, I did a practicum at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. And then because of through the fellowship program and through my connections I made at the ACTS workshop, I was able to get a grant to use the supercomputers at Berkeley Lab, which is what I did for my dissertation. I developed some computer codes to solve this problem, and I ran them on the supercomputer at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. I also applied for a scaling reimbursement program to get even more hours on the supercomputer, so I could run really big jobs. So That's a lot of extra benefits that, you know, isn't on paper that you get from the fellowship. It can open up lots of other opportunities to you. So, and then here I share kind of more importantly is all the connections that you make through fellowships. And this is just a short little story I'll share with you about someone named Sarah Richardson. And she was in the CSGF program when I was the program manager. And when she was wrapping up, she said, oh, I want to go to work at Berkeley Lab. I said, okay, well, let me see what I can do. And I facilitated her being offered to apply for, which she did get this, what we call a named postdoc at Berkeley Lab. And the named postdocs are exceptionally prestigious and very, very high paying. So it was a great opportunity for her. She had this one fellowship and then she got the next one. At some point later, I introduced her to a colleague of mine whose name is Damien Mousson, and Sarah later ended up, after she finished her postdoc at Berkeley Lab, she ended up starting up her own company through this entrepreneurial program that she had gotten involved in at Berkeley Lab. And Damien ended up being an angel investor in her company. So how about that for really cool connections? So I'm really excited about that one. And there's a nice little story about Sarah in this link here. Okay, so hopefully you feel motivated to apply for a fellowship. Next, I'll talk about applying and what it is like, how to find opportunities, what the application is like, and a little bit about deadlines. So here are a few possibilities I compiled, which might be useful to you. And that, again, the slides will be available, so you can, then they include links to all these, but these are graduate fellowships, and there's some comparison. This is I think a couple years old, so some of the numbers might be a little out of date, but there are lots of programs through most all the government agency, DOE, NSF, DOD. There's, of course, lots of private agencies like Hertz, private foundations that also provide fellowships as well. Here's a list of postdoc fellowships that are available. So, of course, National Research Council, NSF, the National Academies has plenty as well. AAAS has fellowships. And then I listed several of the Department of Energy ones, since that's kind of where I know a lot about, because that's where I've spent a lot of my areas. And of course, there's the L'Oreal postdoctoral fellowship, which AAAS administers. There's the AAUW one. So there's lots of different fellowships basically out there. And like I say, all the Department of Energy National Labs have what they call these named postdocs, and actually they have multiple named postdocs, so they're really worth looking into. So a few more possibilities I'll throw out there. I am actually currently a fellow in the Better Scientific Software program. So this is like for professionals, right? So they do awards for students and postdocs, but I'm certainly more in my career, more established in my career, and so there's fellowships for those as well. And then of course there's lots of opportunities through professional society. So depending on what your discipline is, whether you're in life sciences or physical sciences or math or computer sciences, check your professional societies as well. So basically the take-home message is that there are a lot of opportunities out there. And my kind of guidance is that you should do your homework and find the best option for you, okay? So that because there's so many opportunities out there, you wanna make sure that you direct your efforts at the one that makes the most sense for you. And what does that mean? To me, it means it matches your interests, so it's gonna provide you benefits that you're looking for. And what's also really important is that you look like someone that they want to fund. So every organization that is putting a fellowship out there, they have a reason for why they want to support you. And it's really worthwhile for you to become familiar with why they are, what is their mission and their goals, and then which will tell you like what kind of people are they looking for, and you'll know whether that's you or not. And that will of course raise your chances of getting the fellowship. So I'm going to pause for a minute and see if there's any questions so far.
And I also dropped the links in the chat to our AAAS fellowships as well as the NSF GRFP.
Perfect. Thank you, Iris. Okay, not hearing or seeing any questions, I will continue on. So in terms of the actual application components, what I would say is that, there's typically, there's an online application form. If you may have to provide transcripts or GRE scores, but almost always you have to write some essays. They're usually not, so long, but they would cover something like a research statement or your proposed, your research proposal, your motivation. And then of course you have to have reference letters, and we'll talk more about these components as well. But these are kind of the typical components that you find. Of course, you want to absolutely make sure that you don't miss the deadlines, because almost all these programs are very strict on the deadlines. So in terms of the application review, so you put all your materials together and you just put it in there, and like from your perspective, maybe it's like some big black box. What happens to your applications? And so I want to share a little bit with you about what happens, because I've been on the other side of serving on review committees as well as running review committees. So first of all, typically most funders will use an external review committee. So that is a committee that's outside of their organization. They recruit volunteers. Typically they're leaders in the field. If it's a chemistry fellowship or a biology fellowship or whatever, there's people out there that are considered to be usually recognized established people in the community. Almost always you'll find that your application is reviewed by at least 2 people, and likelihood is that it's many more than 2 people. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the reviewers, they could be in a very different field or subfield than you are. And so you have to be careful about that in terms of when you're putting together your essays, and think about that. So some of them might not be familiar with the details of your research, and maybe don't have the technical depth that you do. So it's very important to, it's kind of a fine balance to be able to, show your technical prowess to impress people, but do it in a way that's very understandable. So getting really good at communication and writing will really serve you very well, not just for applying for fellowships, but as you go on in your career, because being able to communicate about what you want to do is extremely important, because we're always having to sell in some way so we could get funding or we get the job or whatever, so that you can do the things that you want to do. All right, so then you might be thinking, okay, so I've got to put all these things together, and there's this panel of experts out there, and some of them might not really understand what I do. What can I actually win one of these, and what will make a good application? And so I would say that what makes a really good application is to create a compelling story, and that story, it's a story about yourself that you're going to kind of tell the story through your application. So that is all the things that you're putting together. So your CV, what's on your CV, your extracurricular activities that are on there should say something about you. Your grades, of course, although when you get to the postdoc level, maybe the grades are a little bit less important. the kind of research that you're doing, the excitement for your research, and the potential that you have. Of course, your essays and your letters of recommendation. So all of these things, I think you can articulate through the application materials, and very importantly through your essays. So when you write those essays, make sure you're really telling the story. You're letting the reader know about how excited you are, and how you're going to go about doing your work, and why they should fund you. So an important thing to know, because I know sometimes people think, well, you know, I this is what I want to do, but maybe I haven't done it yet, and maybe I don't have enough experience. But really, when you get something like this, people are going to invest in you and your potential. So you can demonstrate through your essays and your application your potential. So why should someone invest in you? That's kind of a question that you have. And there are lots of great reasons for them to do that. You just need to kind of get it figured out and get it on paper as to why they should invest in your potential. So the good side of that is it takes a little pressure on you. I mean, you have to develop a really nice CV, but if you don't have everything that you think you have, then just talk about the potential that you have in order to accomplish what you'd like to, what you want to accomplish, and what you're asking for in the proposals. So in terms of reference letters, I want to share a few resources here that some of my colleagues have put together. And the first one is by a quite famous mathematician named David Keyes. And he has put together, through the Society of Industrial and Applied Mathematics, this little kind of article up on the art of procuring reference letter. It's really, really, even if you're not a mathematician, it's really, really good read, because it talks about developing relationships with the people that you're going to ask to write you letters. And of course, this is something you start long before you ask for letters, but it's really important, because how you ask for those letters, is very important, and the relationships that you build with the people, both when you ask for letters and then in the future, they become maybe your collaborators and whatnot. Rebecca Brannon, who is a retired professor of mechanical engineering. She was at Utah. Also has some really nice resources about, as you're going, kind of the keeping about me notes, so that helps you with building your resume and building materials that you can talk about for when you're applying for your fellowship. She also has kind of a more down-to-earth article about requesting letters of recommendations and how to request them, when to request them, what you need to provide to them, because as you can imagine, professors very often get lots and lots of requests for letters. And of course, they tend to get them right around the time when all the applications are due. So if you are able to kind of figure out in advance to give people more time and not ask at the last minute, that will also help you as well. So then I will just want to mention that there is AAAS is organizing another webinar coming soon, which will actually feature some fellowship providers. And here's some of the agencies that might be included, but this is where the funders themselves will actually be on a panel. We'll talk about their fellowships that they provide and be available to ask questions, to answer any questions that you might have. So yeah, so let's see. Now I'm more than happy to take some questions from anyone. Anyone have any questions about fellowships, or want to talk about kind of your plans or what you're doing?
Hello, I guess I have a.
Go ahead.
You can go.
Go ahead.
No, you can go first, because as appropriately with my two interests and wanting to, you may be able to speak on the questions I'm getting ready to ask. So feel free to go first, because it's going to relate to the STEM ed. And so essentially, that would be my question, kind of like.
So opportunities in that area.
Yes, in that area, because I am, third year doctoral, gonna have to come out in December with COVID and everything, and I'm okay with that. But just setting myself up for that, I know there's a career opportunity that might be, different ones that are available, but, I'm interested in the outreach and making that more of a part of what I do. So,
sure. Can talk about that all, all the time, all day. So I'm, a research chemist by training. I got my bachelor's at UNC Greensboro from North Carolina. I got a master's in analytical chemistry from A&T, and then I went straight into industry. So I had a 15-year industry career in analytical and polymer chemistry at Dow, but I have been doing outreach almost 30 years in my personal life. I started developing K-12 informal science programs in the community, in college. So I had been doing that forever. And I actually left my industry career to go take care of my mom in North Carolina, and then she later passed away. So that's what led me to, transitioning to STEM ed research and policy. I was like, I've been doing all this outreach in the community forever. How do I get credentialed in this area since I had left my industry job? So I was in North Carolina, and the only school that had a PhD in STEM education research and policy was NC State. So that's what led me there. But as far as like fellowship opportunities, the AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellowship was transformational for me. It's really an opportunity for people who come from, you have to have completed your PhD, but you have to start early in the process. It's a 1-year application process. Many people reach out to me on LinkedIn to get help with that application process, and I actually do spend time helping people navigate that process. But it is a great opportunity for STEM professionals from all backgrounds to literally go from one area, cancer research, to STEM program management without having to go back to school. So it's a great opportunity to make that leap. So many of the people who become fellows, many of them come from academic settings, some come from federal science agencies, some come from industry. So all three sectors. But it is a great way to, if you're interested in DEI and broadening participation in STEM education and outreach, climate change, like all of those issues are projects and areas that you will work on. And it led me to the work that I'm doing now at AAAS. So I served at the Department of Justice, the National Institute of Justice, and I developed an agency-wide diversity and inclusion initiative that also included, broadening participation in their STEM doctoral program. So I would definitely say the AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellowship. There's also the National Academies has like a science policy one that's a shorter one over the summer, but many of them also, I know those fellows as well, they also have interest in STEM education and outreach. So those are two that I would mention off the top of my head. I can definitely send you some more resources. But yeah, that's a year-long process. So it definitely helps to start early, as Marianne said, put together a spreadsheet or a chart, pull all your links and deadlines. One thing that I think is very underutilized that as fellows we were trained to do is the informational interview. So like reaching out to people on LinkedIn, that's the place I suggest to say, hey, I see you, are alumni of this fellowship or received this fellowship. Like you'd be surprised how many people that will actually take the time out to like give you tips and advice on, inside tips. Like I know I spend a lot of time doing that. So I would definitely say, all the tips that Mary Ann shared, as well as like reaching out to alumni and professional societies, for people that have received those fellowships, because they're more than willing, most people are willing to give you tips and advice on how to craft, competitive application package. But I can send you some more on that specific ones later.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just add to what Iris said is that the other really great thing about the AAAS S&T fellowship is that if you're not sure like what direction you want to go, many people will go and do that fellowship, but then go back to academia, or I believe that the way the statistics works is about a third of the people who do the S&T fellowship stay in some kind of policy related or position, and then most of them go back to wherever they came from, which is very often like you have an academic position or something like that. So it's a nice way to kind of like test the waters and see if you really like it or not. So, and as Iris said, make some really great connections, because that's a really nice way to get connected and get to know people, so that you're already the top candidate.
I think Jay had a question, Marianne. Is there any way for reviewers to see progress you've made since submitting your application? That's a really good question.
That is a really good question. And I would say in general, I'm not aware, unless you kind of reach out to the people and let them know. Of course they won't know, but it doesn't hurt for you to say, reach out to the fellowship providers and say, oh, hey, this has happened, especially if you got an award, or you had a paper published in Science magazine, or something like that. So I would say that the only way to do it is for you to kind of reach out there. I don't know, Iris, if you have any other suggestions.
Yeah, I agree. Usually once it's, reviewers have reviewed it, it's just on to the next phase. You're either a finalist and moving on or not. But I guess, maybe similar to a job application process, you could, if you're not selected, reach out for feedback. Maybe, I don't see why that wouldn't be an option. That may be a way to give you some pointers for the next time if you apply. Yeah, usually once, not during that process, I wouldn't think that there would be a way to that pretty much once you submit, that's that's it, pretty much. But that was a very good question.
Yes, I agree. So, and I like what you said, Iris, about if you want to apply again in the future, and don't get discouraged about if you get get declined by a fellowship. I'll tell you, when I applied for CSGF, I think I applied for like a lot. I'm an overachiever, so I think I applied for 5 or 6 fellowships, and CSGF was the only one I got. And it really surprised me, because they were ones that maybe I would have considered like less prestigious, but I didn't get them. And that's why I say, get the one that's right for you. I mean, in hindsight, I go, well, of course I got CSGF because I'm a computational scientist, and I was really interested in working at the DOE labs, and so like I was exactly what they were looking for, you know what I mean? And so that's why doing that homework in advance is really important. And you shouldn't, getting the declination just means it wasn't a good match, right? I mean, that could very well be what it is, right? So
yeah, and it's good practice. Definitely, I agree, Marianne. Cast a wide net, apply for multiple at one time, and just see what lands. But yeah, it's good practice. You can, I would reach out for feedback. There's nothing wrong with that. They can either say yes or no. And again, just like reaching out to other people who have had that fellowship. If you don't know people offhand, you can search on LinkedIn. And again, I'm a huge proponent of being engaged in your professional societies. I'm a 30-year member of NOBSHE, a 32-year member of ACS. So definitely be involved in your professional societies, because that is another way to find out about fellowships and other opportunities like postdocs. And Marianne did a great webinar on postdocs that she's also going to do, I think, on April 13th. So definitely tune in for that if you missed the last one on postdocs. And then again, Marianne, what you said about the competitiveness, our L'Oreal postdoctoral fellowship for women in science, we get about 600 applicants and we award 5 fellows out of that. So our science and technology policy fellowship, we wind up with about 300 fellows over the executive, judicial, and legislative branch, but we might have 1,000 applicants. I don't know. I don't remember. Yeah, but these fellowships are also opportunities if you might not be interested in staying, at the research bench, and if you have interest in science policy and STEM education and broadening participation and innovation and all of those things, it's definitely a way, an opportunity to leverage your STEM expertise to work in these other areas. So yeah,
Absolutely. They're really worthwhile. And let's say, quote, worst case scenarios, you don't end up with one, but going through the process, you learn so much, and you will hone your skills and make connections. Even if it's just connections with your letter writers. Those are really important things that will really help you. So good. What up? Anyone else have other questions or want to talk about your careers or whatnot? We're here for you guys, so feel free to ask more questions or put anything in the chat.
I have a question for those of you who are doctoral students. I can't remember if it's the majority of you or if that was only one person that answered, but are you thinking about postdocs or careers or fellowships? Like, what are your next steps? I know Tara shared her interest. Anybody else like to share? Are you looking for a postdoc? You want to work, go directly into one of the 4 workforce sectors, or are you thinking about a fellowship?
Can you hear me? So I got a postdoc that we're still trying to figure out the start date because I defend May 4th. But I honestly want to take like just a little break. I know it sounds a little, I've been stressed. So I want to take, a couple weeks off. So we're kind of still negotiating the start date because I keep pushing it back a little bit. But so he gets a lot of private funding, and that has been very, luckily, Dr. Finn is still saying that I can apply for fellowships, but it's not like his top priority. But I really, really want to for myself. But that's kind of where I'm at.
So,
Yeah, and go ahead, Marianne.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead. You're on mute.
Your mental health is key. You need to make that a priority. It's stressful times for everybody, given what we've gone through over the last 2 years. So you need to prioritize your, self-care, your mental space. And I would say my suggestion is always take ownership of your own education. If you need time, you need to take that time. Maybe there are fellowships that are just 3 months over the summer. That's a shorter term that can give you that break instead of committing for a full year or 2 years. So really be creative and innovative. It's your education, nobody else's. Your faculty advisor and mentors, they are gatekeepers and mentors, but at the end of the day, it's your education. So really think about what's best for you, because you don't want to start and not have be in the right mind space and not be into it. So you really want to give that some thought about, what's going to be beneficial for you. So look into the options. You might can create your own opportunity. So just really be innovative and creative about, thinking about your, educational path. So that's what I would say.
I would do a resounding second on that. Absolutely, it's your path, it's your education, and your own self-care is most important. I'll just add one small comment about the person that you are already kind of lined up to work with, and he said you could apply for fellowships, but it's not his priority. That is exactly what I would expect for an advisor to say, because it's not, it's actually, it's doing a fellowship is much better for you, not for them, right? Because if you don't have a fellowship, then they have more control over you. I'll just be a little bit honest here, you know, because you're dependent on them for funding. If you have your own fellowship, you have your own funding, so you have more freedom. So they are not going to want you to get a fellowship. I mean, some people who are really good mentors will, because they know it's better for you, but a lot of them won't because it's not better for them. Or they'll perceive it that it's not better for them. It's not to say that it actually isn't better for them. So take care of yourself.
Absolutely. And we have two questions, one from Jay Pandy. I'm a first-year PhD student in computer science at NC State. Go Pack. And I'm looking for funding for the rest of my time in the program. I'm planning to apply for the NSF DRFP this fall. Great. I review for that fellowship. It's an awesome opportunity. But Mary Ann, did you have anything to add?
I just agree completely. It's an awesome fellowship, and I would just say that I would encourage you to try to apply for others. And as a first-year PhD student, you'll want to apply. Like, now's your time, right? Because if you get too far in your PhD program, some of the opportunities won't be available to you until you get to the end. Like there will be some fellowships that will be for writing your dissertation, you know, at the very end. But where you are right now is a perfect time to apply. I just encourage you to apply for more.
Okay. Hi, Sana. Glad you could join us. We have another question. Do we know if there are any fellowships or grants for professionals who want to get back into academia? That is an awesome question. I don't know of any, but that's an awesome.
That is an awesome question. And you know, I think, well, I know that there are fellowships that are for people who to go into academia, you know, that are specifically like towards building the professorate. But I'm not remembering what agency, you know, and then I would imagine that, yeah, so I would say that as far as I can tell, that yes, there are some. I don't know who they are, but Google will probably help you find them.
That's a great question. I hadn't even thought about that. I'm just aware again of the like preparing for professorate programs that graduate schools have their grad students go through, but that is I'll actually check on that.
Yeah.
Back. I know we have about 2 minutes left. In case there are other questions, I just want to make sure I drop the survey link in the chat. So definitely make sure to complete the survey, and just some closing thoughts. And you still have time to ask more questions. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks so much, Mary Ann, for our awesome presentation. Please complete the survey. If you want to learn more about our EARN program, definitely visit our link, and definitely follow us on social media. Any other questions or closing thoughts, Mary Ann?
I'm good. I just wish everyone the best of luck in their pursuits and their careers. I'm always happy to be a resource for you, so feel free to reach out to me. And good luck.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Wonderful.